There are more moves coming for the Houston Rockets as we reveal the shocking truth behind the Cam Whitmore trade and why that has now set up the Rockets to make another move in the near future. We'll tell you who that move will be right here on Rockets Digest. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join it with us, and want to give a big thank you to all of Rockets Nation. We have gained almost 2,000 subscribers in the last month. We are closing in on 4,000 subscribers, and we just want to let you know the content is not going to stop. The growth is going to keep coming. We're going to get more live streams. When the season starts, we're going to have game streams. We're going to talk Summer League. We're going to talk everything about the Houston Rockets. So this channel is just on its rise. Let's talk about the Cam Whitmore trade from yesterday. Now, in a lot of ways, it was shocking to the NBA and to Rockets fans because we know the talent that Cam Whitmore possesses, and the fact that all he could get back was 2 second-round picks from the Washington Wizards was a little bit disappointing. I mean, this guy as a starter was averaging around 20 points per game. However, he does go back to a place where he is from. He is still very young, and I fully believe he will flourish in the Washington environment, in an organization that, credit where credit's due, they're on the rise. Like, they are doing the right moves to try and make them a better squad. Now, for Rockets fans, it's an interesting situation because we knew Cam was good, but from my point of view, and maybe everybody doesn't have this, he wasn't going to play. He had a little bit of problem with having a team-first mentality, and we'll go into that in just a second. But it also just didn't fit the depth chart. He wasn't going to get the minutes that he deserved. And he wasn't going to get those minutes for this year, or for next year, or potentially even the year after that. And he only has about 2 years left on his rookie deal. Were the Rockets going to extend him in 2 years when he had been a bench player? I mean, granted, he could have increased his role, and, who knows what could happen. But were they going to do that? Probably not. So instead, they chose to do the classy move, which, credit where credit is due, they sent him to a place where they believed he could thrive and develop to a place where he moves back home. Kind of all the positive things here for Cam Whitmore. But in the same sense, 2 second-round picks, that seems a bit low, right? I mean, this guy was a quote-unquote, gonna be a very good player for the Houston Rockets. The way the organization talked about him this year was like he is on the rise. But I want to remind you of something, and I don't have a graph for this because I think it's important just to kind of say it face-to-face. He was not going to play, and he was tried. The Rockets tried to trade him in the Kevin Durant trade. And instead, the Phoenix Suns said, we want more second-round picks. So the Phoenix Suns valued second-round picks over Cam Whitmore. If that doesn't tell you a little bit of the league's value of him, maybe that would be a little bit more of a thing to look at now that we know he only got 2 second-round picks back. And yes, the Rockets took an offer that would better his future rather than maybe the best offer on the table. But still, I think we maybe had him on a higher pedestal than the NBA as a league and GMs across the league had them. And there's also this. We had this again. Cam Whitmore, and I talked about it a moment ago, but he was frustrated with his role in Houston. Now, despite this, the Rockets were periodically meeting with Cam Whitmore about trying to have a more team-first mentality, which, of course, led to head coach Ime Udoka challenging Whitmore publicly and privately to adapt a more team-first approach on both ends of the floor. And, quite frankly, from what we've heard, it wasn't a great response. I'm not going to say he was playing me ball and wanted to get all the stats, but he wasn't a team-first guy. And for what the Rockets are trying to build, and for what the Rockets are trying to do in the upcoming years, stop me if I'm wrong, I don't want a non-team first guy on my roster. I don't really want that. I know the NBA is very selfish, and it's hard not to do that. But for a guy who is, again, not going to be a valuable minutes guy just because of the position he was in this year, I'd want him to be more team first, and he wasn't. And quite frankly, he's going to do great in Washington, and he's going to be a starter, probably at least get really valuable minutes, and I'm excited for him. But I still also think this was a bit about money as well. And that's where we go into the potential moves coming up. Jed Katz of Rockets SI said, quote, "The trade does more for the Rockets than simply getting Whitmore off the roster. The move was largely done for a salary cap reason, as they're now even more under the first apron than before." End quote. And so that's where we go and look at the next graphic we have, which is the offseason projection for the Rockets after the Cam Whitmore trade. There's a couple of things that I want to pay attention or maybe dial in on. The roster is great. I think the starting five is perfect, and I would arguably say this roster is a too deep roster. Like, you can put the subs in and still have a very good NBA roster. But the projected salary is now at $193.3 million. So it's about about $2 million below the first apron. They're also a little bit at that tax threshold, but they're in between that first apron. And the first apron is the one the Rockets have exclusively said, we're not going to get there. We don't want to get there. But there's also one more thing that the trade did for them that I want to hone in on. And we zoom in the photo a little more. The exceptions for the money. They have a $3.5 million trade exception now. Okay. They also have a veteran minimum trade exception now. What can they do with a veteran minimum contract or a trade exception of 3.5? I first want to talk about the trade exception because that seems to be more valuable because the veteran minimum has always been an exception. The trade minimum, though, came in from this trade, from this Cam Whitmore trade. And there's a name that was mentioned a couple times, and I want to hone on him for just a second. Gary Trent Jr., a guard from the Milwaukee Bucks who averaged 11 points per game last season, and his field goal percentage and three-point percentage were both north of 400. I think he would be a very good trade target for the Houston Rockets. Again, his salary and the 3.5 would fit perfectly with him, and quite frankly, the Houston Rockets could use a guard like Gary Trent Jr. Now, do I think that is the best move for the Rockets, considering what is potentially still available on the free agent market? Probably not. And for what the Rockets have done this offseason, trading for Kevin Durant, trading now for Cam Whitmore, or trading Cam Whitmore away, rather, maybe a trade is an option, obviously with that tax exception. But what about that veteran minimum? What about that? What exactly could the Rockets do with that? Well, a veteran minimum contract for the 2026 season or 2025 season is about $3,600,000. There's two players that I think of that we've talked about on this show that one of them would be willing to take the veteran minimum just to play basketball this upcoming season, to be quite frank. And two, there's another player who is getting paid $22 million a season to play with a different team that could sign for the veteran minimum with the Houston Rockets. The first guy I'm talking about, of course, is none other than Damian Lillard, who, like I said, got waived by the Milwaukee Bucks, and they stretched out his salary over the next 5 seasons to where he is getting paid north of $22 million to play basketball for the Milwaukee Bucks, except he will not be playing for them. Now, he is coming off a torn ACL, or rather Achilles, I should say. He wouldn't be available to the playoffs, at best. But he averaged 25 points per game this past season. He's turning 35, and he wants a ring. And guess where the best place for him to go would be for the ring? The Houston Rockets. Guess where the best place would go for the place for him to go that would not require him to be an all-star level guy as soon as he got back? The Houston Rockets. Him and Fred VanVleet as our point guards, with Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd as the 2. You have the 3 being Kevin Durant and Tari. You got Jabari, and Kevin Durant and all that down there with Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams. Not to mention Dorian Finney-Smith out there, but with Tari. That's the guy I was looking at. I missed the name. This would be an absolute menacing roster in the playoffs if you got Damian Lillard. Now, I've talked about him in a previous video, and I said that it would be a very good option. But I also think that a veteran minimum contract for Russell Westbrook would also be a very good option. He is a little older, going into his age 36, 37 season. He averaged 13.3 points per game, and he would be willing to accept the veteran minimum. I believe that's what he was on when he was with Denver this past season. Now, his stats, frankly, aren't as good as Damian Lillard. His field goal percentage is right about there, but he's not a three-point shooter, at least not anymore in his career. 6.1 assists per game, though, is what I like to look at. And I want a point guard for this team who can move the ball around, especially when you're talking about a guy who's going to be a depth piece. Now, Is Russell Westbrook going to accept a depth piece with the Houston Rockets? That's the big question. And that's why I look at Damian Lillard a little bit more, because he knows his situation. He knows what exactly is coming up with his contract and how he's going to get paid $22 million for the Bucks the next 5 seasons until he's 30 years or 40 years old. And he can go out and go win a championship with a squad that's going to pay him $3 million a year, which again is an exception to the tax threshold / first apron. These would both be perfect pickups for the Houston Rockets, because I have been saying that we need a guard. But we know Ime Udoka, he loves defensive forward. That's all he wants on his roster, and that's about what he's got. Because if you look at this dang depth chart, I would consider Amen Thompson more of a forward than a guard. However, he is playing shooting guard. Then you have Kevin Durant, Tari Eason, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jabari Smith Jr., forwards, and then Alperen Şengün, Steven Adams, and Clint Capella, who are centers. This is Ime Udoka's perfect roster right here. Reed Sheppard and Fred VanVleet are just the guards that have to be guards. There is one more guy I want to talk about that I saw in the mentions and replies, kind of talking about him as a potential trade option, and I want to get the feel from Rockets Nation on him. Now, I'll start with his name is Keon Ellis from the Sacramento Kings, and he had his option picked up by the team. He wasn't expected to have his option picked up by the team, in fact. It was supposed to be a thing that was let go by the Sacramento Kings. Now, instead, they decided to pick it up, and would he be a good fit? Maybe. 8.3 points per game. He's a 6'6 guard, 25 years old. He was, I believe, a second-round pick last year, or maybe a first-round pick. I really don't remember, but his field goal percentage is fantastic at .489, his three-point percentage at .433. His intangibles are all there, and I think he would be a perfect target considering his option was $2.3 million. So in a trade clause, that's easily within the realm of that 3.5. So he could be a potential option. There's a lot of things the Rockets could do. And as much as Ime Udoka wants this forward heavy roster, and he has that, you can't sit here and say that a guard wouldn't help this team. I fully believe it would make the Rockets even better than they already are. And so now we sit here and wait, and we look at this roster and say, this is a pretty dang good roster that is under the first apron and just above the tax threshold. I don't think they need to make a move, but I would certainly love one right now. Because if you could make it a officially 2-deep roster, because I would say right now they're 9 deep, because Fred VanVleet is a good point guard. That's great. Aaron Holiday as your 2, point guard, as your second point guard, question marks. But after that, you're great. Amen Thompson and Reed Sheppard, I trust both of them. You go into your power forward position, or your small forward rather, you're probably going to put Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, Dorian Finney-Smith as your forwards. So right there, that's 4 for the 2 forward positions. And then for the center, they've got, I would argue Clint Capella is good too. I think he is very valuable. I know that his play over the past couple years has been definitely falling, but either way, you still have Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün as your top 2 centers. So if you could just get a point guard to play behind, I'm not disrespecting Aaron Holiday. I just don't think he's a number 2 level point guard. This would make this team an elite level to which I don't know if there's a team in the NBA depth-wise that would compete with the Houston Rockets. Now that's just my 2 cents, and I want to hear what y'all are thinking in the comment section, and that's exactly where I'm going to leave you. Let me know your thoughts. Is this something you want to do? Is Russell or Damian an option you would like? Is there somebody you'd like to trade for that I didn't mention? Or is Keon, Ellis, Gary Trent Jr. somebody that would be a good idea for you? Well, let me know down in the comment sections. But for now, we will see you next time here on Rockets Digest. Peace out, everybody.